Have you ever felt like an invader when you enter a home where your name is still on the deed? Just after 3 p.m. on Thursday of last week, I did. Knees scraped and clutching a juice pouch like it was gold. The porch swing still groaned like it had when I was 8 years old. I briefly believed I was experiencing comfort when the scent of dryer sheets drifted out of the open laundry room window. However, as soon as I entered the front door, I realized that I was now the daughter they were attempting to unwrite. I was greeted at the entrance by my cousin Ellie. Not a hug, no grin. Simply said, "You got here fast," as if I were delivering a package without going back to my childhood home. Like a tour guide on autopilot, she escorted me into the dining room. The room was packed, but no one looked at anyone. My mother, Uncle Victor, and Aunt Dree all sat at the head of the table as if it were Sunday dinner rather than a damage control measure. Then there was Ramona herself, with her distinctive navy blue blazer thrown over the back of her chair like a throne, and her elbows resting on the table. My older sister was sitting in the ideal position. You've seen Ramona if you've ever seen someone wear silence like a crown. She was silent for a while. She simply examined me as if I had arrived in costume. Finally, she added, "You're early." "No," I said, putting my luggage down. "I simply don't wait for train wrecks to get to me." That made some people cringe, not hers. Ramona did not recoil. "We're not here to fight," she added, adjusting her exquisite gold necklace, which she had supposed to purchase on Etsy, and had stolen from Grandma's jewelry box the day of the burial. Correct? And I wasn't around to recall that she had phoned me 6 months prior, requesting a favor that I foolishly provided. And before that, 2 years without a word, I remained upright. It was as though someone had vacuumed out all the love and replaced it with things that were not spoken, making the dining room feel colder than it should have. My mother brushed invisible lint from her lap and added, "We're asking for your help. Ramona is dealing with a legal issue. It's delicate." I arched an eyebrow. She slapped her name on a manuscript that was copied from another author. Quiet. Absolutely. I could see the fracture because Ramona's jaw constricted just enough. That's when I realized. I wasn't with family here. As the cleaner, I was present. It's funny. Until something starts to plague them, they continuously regard you like a ghost. I took a seat. My feet were tired, and the weight of everything I carried in my tote bag, both digitally and emotionally, was heavier than it appeared. Not because I was ready to forgive or be polite. It was there when my gaze strayed to the sideboard. Perched on a fictitious branch, a little ceramic hummingbird with frozen wings. Grandma Millie had owned it. She claimed that it reminded her to remain motionless only when absolutely necessary, and she had kept it close to the kitchen window. When we were teenagers, Ramona broke the wing when she knocked it off the ledge. I recall thinking she just fixes what people can see when I saw it days later, glued back together with the fracture still visible. Here it was, once more. Re-glued, recycled, shown and yet damaged. Calm and icy, I met Ramona's eyes directly. "You need my assistance." Just one nod, Ellie handed me the mug uncomfortably, and I took a sip. Mint tea cold, adapting. Then I put it down and said, "Tell the truth." She didn't respond. Obviously not. Truth is seldom Ramona's first step. She trims, polishes, and circles it until it shines just enough to get by. However, that is no longer how I work. Not since the last time I gave her something I had personally constructed, and she went on to sell it as her own. Allow me to transport you back 16 months ago, when I was someone else. I didn't require an emotional buffer to answer Ramona's calls back then. Before documentation, I still thought family meant anything. In Durham, North Carolina, I was renting a one-bedroom apartment above a laundry. In a strange monastic manner, I was happy, even though the windows fogged in the winter and the heater only turned on when it felt like it. I made just enough money at the nonprofit to cover my living expenses. I was developing a digital toolkit for social work interns that included case flow, maps, interactive templates, and a feedback algorithm that I had written myself. Although it wasn't glitzy, it was effective. I gave it the name Bridgeboard. I owned it. Suddenly one Sunday night, Ramona called. "I need a visual system like a map or something." She explained, referring to a client who was attempting to reorganize their mentoring program. I informed them that I knew a bright individual. I nearly grinned. Wonderful. She spoke as if she had suddenly realized how valuable I was. I sent over a bridgeboard demo. It was genuine, even though it wasn't flawless. Because that's how I am, I also included some user prompts and back-end code notes. I over-explain and I create in silence. The brain has always been you, she remarked that week. I am only the face. I should have realized that was a setup, not humility. Use compliments as a disguise. Ramona's new consultancy business opened a month later. With a hummingbird in the logo and a pastel color scheme, she dubbed it Millie Works, a branding tribute to our grandmother. I put that down to nostalgia, even if it hurt. I clicked on her website after that. Bridgeboard had been taken by her, not motivated by, not constructed with, captured identical format, same flow of tears. They still had my error messages, those little witty notes I'd written late at night to make the user grin, simply nestled beneath her emblem. I initially told myself that I was exaggerating. She might have been in a hurry, or perhaps she had intended to give me credit. Perhaps. So I gave her a call. She spoke in an overly bright voice. Hi, Delaney. What is going on? I visited your website. Quiet. Next. Isn't it tidy I found this incredible man on Fiverr? Slowly I said, Ramona. It's Bridgeboard, a rhythm. Oh, I thought you said you weren't planning to scale it. The lie went on. You did say I could use the layout after all. A beta was sent to you. You didn't get a license from me. You didn't tell me not to. I felt sick to my stomach. Not because she stated it, since I was aware of it. That voice, that deflection with the shrug. Ramona was an expert at using uncertainty as a weapon. It didn't exist if it wasn't documented. It was consent if you didn't voice your objections loudly enough. In partnerships, friendships, and family dinners where someone else took the fall, she had always behaved in that manner. And suddenly it was me once more. Before I could yell, I hung up. Ironically, one of her attorneys sent me a cease and desist 2 days later, claiming that I was violating Millie Works' intellectual property, claiming that the ideas and materials belonged to the parent company and brand, and threatening to take additional action if I used or shared the toolkit in public. I chuckled. I had been reluctant to proclaim myself a creator for 6 years, and now someone was vying for ownership of the thing I had silently made, not because it was humorous. I was numb for a week or so, didn't consume much food. I didn't take as many showers as I ought to have. I simply sat on my apartment floor and read that letter again, wondering if it was possible to be robbed without someone breaking in. Yes, is the response. What you give them, they don't take. When you ask for it back, they make you look crazy after taking what you are. I secretly left the nonprofit after sending an email to my manager. I was unable to think clearly, and truthfully, I felt ashamed. Not even Eli, my ex-girlfriend, who is now occasionally a friend, knew what had happened. I simply vanished for a time. However, suffering may either fuel or consume you if it simmers for a long enough period of time. I went with the latter. I got to work, printing, everything. Screenshots of the Slack conversations where I originally tested the concept, early drafts, code changes, and timestamps. I even located the digital whiteboard subscription ticket that I used to lay everything out. I wasn't yet constructing a case. I was telling myself that she couldn't completely destroy what I had created since I had actually made it. I suddenly recalled the hummingbird. From a storage box, I extracted it. The wing that Ramona smashed when we were children was still fractured. I didn't glue it, though. I purposely left it broken and placed it next to my desk. Not as an injury, as an observer. I wasn't sure if I would file a lawsuit by the end of that month. I wasn't even sure if I had the funds or the stomach to do it. However, I was aware of one thing. The calm person Ramona had taken was not the right one. And a few quiet moments return with a bang. If you have never been legally gaslit, allow me to explain. They send you a ton of letters. Phrases like proprietary framework and violations of brand integrity are boilerplate threats disguised in a formal manner. It's accurate and never noisy. because scaring you into running is not the aim. It's to make you question whether you were ever able to stand. In the early spring, I received 2 more warnings from Ramona's crew. A trademark filing was mentioned in the second one. That's what broke the shell at last. 3 days after laundry, I was sitting cross-legged on the floor of my little apartment, covered in a hoodie next to a jumble of sticky notes and receipts, when I read that paragraph once more. Registration of trademark, February 2nd. February 2nd. My mouth became parched. I went into my old development logs on my laptop. Before I found it, I had no idea what I was specifically looking for. On January 17th, a code archive with the name BB Test Preflow Final was posted on GitHub. 17 days prior to her filing, I blinked. My hands worked more quickly than my mind. I retrieved my PayPal invoices. I discovered that the API tool I had integrated that week had a $29.99 monthly cost. I next accessed a Google Doc from December 14th, which was even older, in which I had originally typed my diagnostic prompts. To put it another way, I had digital evidence that I had constructed Bridgeboard before she even made an attempt to claim it. She neglected to backdate the falsehood after stealing it in plain sight. The world didn't scream in that particular instance. It merely murmurs, "You now understand." I didn't rejoice. I was unable to even smile. I sat there rocking a little like my body was attempting to adjust. Because catching her wasn't the only goal of that moment. She didn't think I would catch her at all, and there was the realization. I gave someone I hadn't spoken to in more than a year a call that evening. Eli, my voice cracked a little as I spoke. Del, I need assistance. No emotional support. Legal, that is. Does that tech IP guy still know you? She hesitated. Sam Fields. Indeed, someone who understands proper filing is what I require. She made no inquiries. Send me everything, he said. I put my records together in secret over the course of the following 2 weeks. Source files, drafts, receipts, and screenshots of our direct messages in which I provided my customary, excessively lengthy explanation of the concept. Even my mood board is stored in the Grandma Millie theory folder, which is named after the theory that systems like people disintegrate when left unattended. In the dark, each piece of evidence felt like a tiny match. The IP attorney, Sam, was straightforward, even blunt. On our second contact, he stated, "You have a strong claim, particularly in light of the timestamps. However, we don't start with threats." I muttered, "I don't want to sue. All I want is the truth. Filed." He gave a nod. Next, we submit applications for intellectual property clarification and authorship registration. It's not noisy. It's surgical. However, it makes a mark. He clarified that I could make it lawful without a battle. I required a chain of possession and paperwork. In the middle of March, we turned in the documentation. I kept it a secret. Not my mother, not Ellie, not even Ramona. In particular, not Ramona. Rather, I observed. Silently. The press began to cover her consulting business. She received an invitation to speak at a symposium on digital education. "Built from the ground up," she said as the description for a picture she shared. Sweat, blood, and strategy. I took a screenshot of that one. Even though she was unaware of it at the time, every word she wrote was creating a trail that I could follow back to myself. Then the greatest accident of all occurred, an invitation to a podcast. I received an unexpected message from my friend Leon, who hosted the charitable podcast, Unseen Architects. "Are you still employed in EdTech?" she inquired. "If you would like to discuss creating systems for invisible workers, I have a time slot available." I nearly declined. However, a voice inside of me that I hadn't heard in months told me to let them see you. "According to your own terms," I replied, "Yes." Late April saw the airing of the episode. Only my voice. No pictures. Not a drama. It's just a discussion about design equity and the experience of creating systems that everyone uses but nobody acknowledges. Silently, it became widely popular. Then I received an email on a Tuesday morning that smelled like printer toner and leftover rain. Subject line IP inquiry verification requested came from the summit's event planners, where Ramona was supposed to give a speech. They had received a tip from someone, most likely a listener. They asked for authorial clarification for Bridgeboard's original framework and were reviewing claims of content duplication. I spent a whole minute looking at the screen. I didn't rant to them. I sent a timeline, a copy of the registration, a folder of papers with Sam's courteous, legally blessed cover letter. Ramona's name disappeared from the list of speakers 2 days later. No justification, not a drama, simply gone, as if she had never been asked, as if I'd never been removed. I took the hummingbird off the desk and placed it next to my computer that evening. It's still cracked, mine yet. You would assume there would be some noise when it unraveled. However, it didn't. It appeared gradually like a shadow being drawn back until the light struck precisely where she didn't want anyone to see it. It began with murmurs, a tweet here, a LinkedIn post there, nothing spectacular, just inquiries. Hey, didn't someone else highlight this model in a podcast last month? And I'm fairly certain that this interface was attributed to a developer by the name of Delaney P. in a previous GitHub thread. I never answered. I didn't have to. In contrast, Ramona began blogging more frequently. Affirmations, videos, and stories. When you shine too brightly, people will always try to tear you down. This was her favorite defense: seem like a victim before anyone places blame. Get right to the point. However, the problem with lies is that they require a lot of upkeep. And the truth? The truth simply waits. The episode of the podcast continued to circulate. A comparison of Bridgeboard and Milliworks replete with overlays and timestamps was then stitched on TikTok by someone. The comment section went crazy. This is theft. It goes beyond inspired. You guys brought in the wrong silent sister. What makes the hummingbird logo so precise? LOL. All materials used by Milliworks are the result of a collaborative effort over many years, said a succinct, brittle statement released by Ramona's PR team within a week of her remarks being locked down. No names, no acknowledgement, only fog. However, it was insufficient. Anya, one of her former interns, shared screenshots of back-end chats. Ramona freely talked about repurposing a prototype that was supplied to her by a family source. One of the files, Millie Theory, Chotch, final1.dpx, still retained my original file name. The internet then abruptly changed its direction. The number of followers of her brand began to decline. Invitations to speak were discreetly withdrawn. A brief article titled, "The Architect You Never Saw the Delaney Problem," appeared on a tech website. I remained silent. I didn't go live. Not even a tweet from me. I simply continued to instruct. 2 local organizations and a GED preparation facility had adopted my Bridgeboard method, which is now legally mine. Despite the name's lack of flair, it was used. Students got better. Thank you emails were sent by parents. Because it was effective, my curriculum survived. The email that I had anticipated, but was nevertheless unprepared for, then arrived. Subject resolution agreement proposal. It came from Ramona's attorneys. A 6-figure settlement, offer, a slick NDA, and words that made me laugh aloud were all included. Both parties agree to stop public discussion withdrawal claims and mutually acknowledge contributions made by all involved in the spirit of mutual healing and professional boundaries. Interpretation: accept the cash. Remove the evidence. Give the throne to her. They referred to it as healing. I referred to it as hush. I got an SMS from Ellie that same day. It said, "I just heard. It's unbelievable that you would destroy your own sister's life in such a manner. You were always skilled at starting fires and acting as though you were observing them from a distance." I looked at it for a while. The problem with betrayal is that not everyone agrees with the untruth. They occasionally take the side of the noisier one. I made chamomile tea that evening and sat beside my desk holding the porcelain hummingbird. There was a little imprint on the underside that I had not previously noticed, Grandma's initials, MLF, etched in faintly. It's still there. She still has it. I carefully reviewed the settlement offer again, before putting it in the middle of my paper shredder. The blades made a clicking sound. Not a drama, no words. Just the quiet sigh of completion. After that, I wrote one sentence in a blank document. The Those who only appreciate you when it suits them don't deserve your silence. I only included a picture of the hummingbird and my name in the post with no caption. It spread more quickly than I anticipated. Teachers, developers, daughters whose ties have been severed, people who had been betrayed, deleted, or borrowed. They shared it because it named something they had been trying to say for years, not to disparage Ramona. My mother finally left me a voicemail that evening, not at fault, not a lecture. Only this: we were mistaken and late. I don't ask for pardon, just, I can see it now. I recognize you. She didn't ask me to give her another call, and I didn't. Not everything can be reversed. The ceasefire was short-lived. I got a notification from the software platform that houses my curriculum dashboard around a week after I destroyed the NDA. A copyright dispute from a third party has resulted in the flagging of your account. Review is still pending. I wasn't shocked. I was ready. However, what caught me off guard was the complaint's origin. It wasn't Ramona's business. It was a Delaware-registered shell, LLC. Clairview Advisory Group is a name I was unfamiliar with and had no apparent affiliation with Milliworks. My lawyer Sam, however, found it in an hour. Ramona's ex-boyfriend, a business strategist she dated before determining she was too busy for intimacy, was the direct result of the paper trail. He continued to handle her license agreements, so it was proxy sabotage now. Phantom files, attacks using proxies. This time, she was attempting to remove me on a technicality. Here's what Ramona didn't understand, though. Being silent does not imply helplessness. It entails observing, and I'd seen enough. I went back to something I had been avoiding, an old drive my grandmother gave me the year before she passed away, while Sam started the legal response. She had given it to me during one of those gentle, lingering embraces that indicate someone is bidding farewell with their body before their voice can catch up. There were files within, dozens of them, plans for lessons, theories of education, and drafts of proposed curricula. However, one folder completely stopped me: DP's inheritance. I took it open. It was there, a license agreement that has been signed. Not only for the original work of my grandmother. However, a notarized and handwritten clause designated me as the exclusive heir to any jointly created frameworks, whether digital or analog, including Bridgeboard, which she had assisted me in naming during a workshop we conducted together 2 years before her death. It was the first time I had observed it, perhaps because I hadn't required it, or perhaps because I didn't think I was deserving. I printed each page, I handed it to Sam, and he almost whistled. "This is the end of the conversation," he remarked, touching the last clause. We filed a public IP update within 48 hours. Verified, dated, notarized, and submitted to the Creative Systems Licensing Bureau for public use. I made a final statement that morning that wasn't dramatic or aggressive. Just evidence. 3 pictures. The page that was notarized. My initials are on the margin of the first draft interface. An up-close look at Grandma Millie's hummingbird statue, which is still intact despite its cracks. Caption being noticed was never the goal of the job. The goal was to create something valuable enough to be stolen. It's mine now. And it always was. It was not a viral post. Silently, it became widely popular. The type of viral that spreads through group conversations between developers and women in STEM inboxes and text messages amongst educators. That week, I got 173 emails. Not all of them came from fans. Some sounded legal and icy. Some attempted to rewrite the story, accusing me of tearing down another woman, acting out bitterness as a brand, and destroying a family member. However, one email caught our attention, from the same peak from which Ramona had been taken. I was asked to give a speech the following year. Theme: constructing systems in the shadows, silent architects. I didn't answer right away. I went home instead. Since the ambush in the dining room, I hadn't returned to the family home. Now it was deserted. My aunt had taken up residence with my mother. The house remained unsold and unclaimed in probate limbo. Like an archive, I moved methodically through it. They had removed the picture frames. However, the hummingbird was sitting on the sideboard's edge, still broken, still positioned like a focal point that nobody wished to describe. I grabbed it. I considered mending the seam or obtaining a replacement, but then I understood that the defect wasn't the fracture. It was a secret. I brought it home after carefully packing it in my luggage, place it next to my window, allow it to create a shadow, let it be both broken and whole, because I was the same thing. If you continue writing, you cannot be erased. Life did not blossom overnight. There were no dramatic reunions, no triumphal montages, and no tearful, "you were right all along" speeches. All that was left was space breath and silence that no longer seemed like exile, but rather absence, at last, given permission to rest. I established a modest scholarship fund in my grandmother's honor, the Millie P. Grant, 3 months after I took back control of Bridgeboard. The $1,000 microgrants for students creating educational resources or tutoring in underprivileged areas weren't particularly impressive. It was an easy form. Who helped you believe in your own voice was the only essay question posed. I continue to receive the responses. I cry over some of them. I laugh at other people. Just one said I didn't believe anyone was observing. You were. That was sufficient. I currently keep the porcelain hummingbird on my windowsill. The fracture was never fixed by me. In the mornings, I let it catch the light. It is no longer broken. It's labeled Ramona. She folded Millie Works quietly the last I heard. Her website linked to a generic landing page featuring a 6-month-old coming soon banner. We haven't communicated. I don't anticipate that we will. The previous Christmas, my mom sent a card. There was no return address on it. A picture of Grandma Millie shot the summer before she died was taped inside. On the reverse side, she had written, "She consistently stated that you would be the one to continue it." Then I didn't pay attention. Now I do. I didn't reply in writing, not because I despise her. However, some mails are deserving of not being answered, not out of rage, but out of boundaries. When I was still tutoring out of the coffee shop by the bus terminal, one of my first pupils, a girl called Soraya, sent me an envelope last week. She is now a college student. She included a small hand-painted card with her thank you note. A hummingbird was on it. Mid-flight, the wings were spread wide. She wrote the following in her handwriting on the back, still broken, still in the air. These days I keep it on my desk, not as evidence, just a friendly reminder of the rooms I departed, the ones I returned to, the ones I constructed myself. I suppose that's the reason I'm sharing this right now. Not to become widely known, not to go to battle. However, it's possible that you have also been muted. Perhaps someone claimed your words as their own. Perhaps they forced you to sit in the audience even though you provided the tools. You may have felt it in your bones even though you were wiped in a way that no one could screenshot. So, let me say this. You can exist without their consent. Their recollection is not necessary to justify your past. Furthermore, you certainly don't need their silence to defend your position. You don't have to apologize to rebuild. Without being asked to return, you can recover. Because if you continue to be there for yourself, if you continue to produce recording, naming you're still here, you have only just begun. Perhaps that's what I'm asking you. Have you ever been removed from your own narrative and then rewritten in some way? Because if I'm paying attention. Aw,